In 1909, the building behind us was completed and contained a chemical battery to store electrical energy from a power station at Port Adelaide, which is owned by the Metropolitan Tramways Trust, to supply electricity to its electric trams. There was insufficient capacity for the power station at Port Adelaide to supply the trams during rush period, so the energy was stored in the battery behind us in the quiet periods to be used during rush periods. The Metropolitan Tramways Trust of South Australia in Port Adelaide. This is the coal wharf where black coal from New South Wales was brought for a power station owned by the government through the Metropolitan Tramways Trust and its electric tramway system in 1909. This is the interior of the power station at Port Adelaide, owned by the M.T.T. It produced high voltage AC power, which was transmitted on pylons to the city, where it was converted into DC power or stored in batteries at the converter stations during quiet periods for use during rush hours. This is the converter station at East Terrace, where alternating current is turned into direct current. A photograph in the State Library taken in 1909 of the lead acid batteries inside the M.T.T converter station at East Terrace. This mural shows the Adelaide Metropolitan Transport Trust M.T.T electric tram system as it was in 1934, which opened in 1910. The dotted lines show the high tension power lines. Conversion station number 14 at Ross Trevor would also have batteries in it. It's 5 p.m. on a mild spring day, and we can see that Queensland requires 7,348 but only has 673 plus 374 from wind generation. So at this point it's importing electricity through two of the interconnectors from New South Wales. New South Wales needs 8542 but only has a total of just over 8,300 of generated and wind power available, so it's importing electricity from Victoria. Victoria needs 5355 but only has just a bit over 5,000, so it's importing electricity from Tasmania and also from South Australia. So electricity is flowing from South Australia through to Queensland and from Tasmania through to Queensland at 5 p.m. on the 14th of November. If we look at the figures for the price and demand, this light mark line is the demand, and this is the prediction for electricity requirements past 8 o'clock in the morning for New South Wales
This is for Queensland. See the peak of demand. And the prediction for Victoria. The demand cycle for South Australia. Here's the demand, and for Tasmania. If we look at 5-minute periods, this goes further back in time, and so we can see back in time this is now going backwards through the night. The requirements in Tasmania went down yesterday evening, yesterday lunch period, this morning and middle of the night. For South Australia, you can see here that the requirements got very low compared to the day back through the night, through the middle of the day. So in the middle of the day yesterday the requirements went low, and morning period, night. This is Victoria. This was the requirements going back in time. For Queensland, see there's quite clear spikes here in Queensland where the demand was high at mid-afternoon and low the rest of the time. And New South Wales, again there are periods in the middle of the night where the requirement is quite low, but during the day the demand is quite consistently high. Tumour 3 power station, just west of Canberra, is the first pumped hydro storage scheme in Australia. It uses off-peak energy to pump water into the reservoir, the Talbingo Reservoir, which is 150 metres above the Blowering Dam. So this is the dam wall for the Talbingo Dam, and 150 metres below is the Blowering Dam, and this is the township of Talbingo. And these are the generators. The power station is fitted with 6 Toshiba turbines, each equipped with Melco manufactured generators, which has combined generating capacity of 1.8 gigawatts of energy. 3 of the 6 units can operate as pumps. The second pumped hydro scheme in Australia was built in 1977 just west of Wollongong, south of Sydney, in the Kangaroo Valley power station. It has 2 generators. Each of 80 megawatts, as pump turbines for a total capacity of 160 megawatts. From the Bendila Pondage, the Kangaroo Valley Pumping and Power Station lifts water further 480 metres to the Fitzroy Falls Reservoir via a tunnel, shaft, pipelines and canal. The water available for hydroelectricity generation is discharged back down the conduits, driving the turbines as returns to the Bendila Pondage. So this is the Kangaroo Valley, Fitzroy Dams, Moss Vale, Kiama and Wollongong, which is just south of Sydney. The third scheme is near Brisbane, the Wivenhoe Power Station. The pumped storage hydro power station consists of two circular silos in the small dam we can see here, called the Split Yard Creek Dam, which is above Lake Wivenhoe with a head of 76 metres. The silos have a diameter of 32 metres and in the bottom of those silos there are two generators of 250 megawatts, which during periods of excess energy during low peak periods pump the water from Lake Wivenhoe into the Split Yard Creek Dam. The Split Yard Creek Dam has sufficient capacity for 10 hours of continuous power generation, and it takes 14 hours of pumping to refill it. Wivenhoe is used in 20% of the peak periods, reducing the peak price obtained by power plants. Interestingly, in periods of drought, it has been planned to actually take water from the waste sewage plants. In other words, recycled water from Brisbane would be put into the Wivenhoe Dam to augment the lack of rainfall. Andrew Blakers, Matt Stocks, Ben Liu, Kirsten Anderson and Anna Nadolling at the College of Engineering and Computer Sciences of the Australian National University have been looking at potential sites for pumped hydro energy storage in Australia, and they have come up with these potential sites shown in red. Of particular interest for this exercise is to look at South Australia, and we can see a chain of red dots here and a few south of Adelaide and 3 up here in the APY lands. This part of Australia, South Australia, in fact, is the highest part of South Australia. Mount Woodroof is up at that point. They've released a spreadsheet of the data and the files which are necessary to get the data display on Google Earth. This is the spreadsheet version for South Australia, and I've highlighted 4 sites out of the 185 sites which have been identified, and the elevation of these dams is shown, along with the potential storage of energy in gigawatt hours. So in 1 hour, this site has potential of releasing 13 gigawatts of energy if it's all released in 1 hour. If we compare this with Tumour 3, which has got a height of 150 metres and can run at 1.8 gigawatt hours, if this was used as pumped hydro, you wouldn't be able to do this 24 hours a day. You'd only be able to use it in the peak periods, which probably would run for a maximum of 3 hours, and you'd have the morning peak and the afternoon peaks. So a 3-hour peak would give you a maximum of 5.4 gigawatt hours if Tumour 3 was being run as a pumped hydro. 5.4 gigawatt hours compared with 13 gigawatt hours for this site, so that this site is potentially twice as big as Tumour 3. So let's look at 1221, which is actually near Lee Creek. This is the map of Australia in Google Earth, and this is the file which has been loaded into the system, and we want to go to reservoir 1221. We can see that this reservoir, potential pumped hydro site, is one of a cluster of a number of potential sites, and this one by itself is twice as big as Tumour 3 in the Snowy Mountains. And this is Lee Creek, which is nearby. The next site we're looking at is 3971. 3971. Which is south of Adelaide, near Sellex Hill, near Mount Compass. (3971) with a storage of 11 gigawatt hours is about twice as big as Tumour 3 if it's functioning as a pumped hydro. The third one we'll look at is reservoir 4016. is up in the APY lands. That's the Northern Territory border, and that's the Western Australian border. (4016) is 50% bigger than Tumour 3 in the Snowy Mountains, and reservoir 3530. Again, this reservoir is among a cluster of reservoirs which is just near Port Perry. It's a string of potentials, and 3530 with a capacity of 7 gigawatt hours of energy again is about 20% bigger than Tumour 3 as a pumped hydro site. The water for these sites is not drinkable water. It's not used as a place to store water. It's used as a resource to store energy. So South Australia has a number of excellent potential sites which are away from national parks and away from residential settlement and are close to existing power lines. This shows Australia's high pressure gas transmission network and the sedimentary basins where the gas can be extracted. So this is South Australia, the Moomba to Adelaide gas pipeline and the various branches from coming out of the Moomba field. This is a more up-to-date map showing the pipelines in Australia for natural gas, showing the sea gas, Southeast Australia gas from just west of Melbourne to Adelaide, and the proposed pipelines to get the gas from Bonaparte and the other gas fields in Darwin into the east coast, where there's a shortage of gas for the generation of electricity and for industry. Australia's state, national government and territory governments have created the Australian Energy Market Operator, which performs an array of gas and electricity market operational development and planning functions and manages the national energy market, and also it manages the Victorian gas transmission network. If we look at the transmission lines, we can see that Victoria and New South Wales tends to have the highest voltages, 500,000 volts and 300,000 volts, while South Australia has a 275,000 volts along with Queensland. This line between Tasmania and Victoria is an undersea high voltage direct current cable. The rest of the system is using AC as the method of transmission. If we come down closer, we see some of the smaller power lines, and we can see that between here there's a straight line which actually is another high voltage direct current power line, and in this case it's underground high voltage. This is the Murray Link interconnector. To get the states to be able to share their gas and electric energy by electricity, we have these interconnectors between the state systems. So this is highlighting then the Murray Link interconnector and a second interconnector. So in the case of South Australia, this particular interconnector means that we can, in South Australia, access the pumped hydro at Tumour 3 and Snowy 2, which is a large pumped hydro scheme announced by the national government. This is the Hayward interconnector between South Australia and Victoria down near Portland. This is the town of Hayward, and we can see that they're proposing a second interconnector with Tasmania. That's existing interconnector, and this would be the proposed one. Amount of use. If we look at the power stations that are in Australia at the moment, this is showing us the number of power stations which are in existence. So it's showing 26 power stations in and around Adelaide, and the rest for Australia. And this is then looking at the density of generation. In terms of renewable energy, this is showing the possibility of using nowhere in this system are they looking at pumped hydro. Looking at hydro but not pumped hydro. In terms of wind, this is showing the places where wind energy would be at a great benefit to this country, and we can see that South Australia in green has large areas of wind energies as a source of renewable energy. The yellow is the good wind areas, and the red of course is low wind. It's usability. Probably the wind is blowing too strongly to be any use. In terms of solar, again, South Australia has large areas of potential solar energy. By 2038, we can see that the utilisation of the Murray Link is projected to be at 90 or above percent, in other words used all the time, and that there'll be a second interconnector which would have a utilisation of about 50%, and the Hayward interconnector would be a high utilisation, and that there'd be a second interconnector between Tasmania and Victoria, and the interconnectors here in Queensland and New South Wales would be at high levels.
Hornsdale. Some of the wind turbines. Brilliant. Can't get near it. The batteries are in behind this switching station. Yeah.
On the 28th September 2016, this is the result of a very large storm that blew across the wheat fields near Melrose, and we can see that the power lines were destroyed when the towers collapsed. This is another view of the towers at Melrose. An aerial view of the storm that caused the destruction of the power pylons near Melrose. Hornsdale homestead at street level from an earlier time using Google Earth. We can see the two sets of power lines running through the property in the background. If we now exit from the street view, we can see the substation with the power lines, and in the background the battery, the so-called biggest battery in the world. Some of the lithium-ion cells inside the largest battery in the world. This newspaper article from December 2015 shows that Hornsdale wind farm is actually used to supply energy to the 400,000 people who live in Canberra, and it's being sold at that price then of $77 per megawatt hour, which is the lowest known contract price for renewables in Australia. And the wind farm will have enough power to supply Canberra 56,000 Canberra houses and provide 13% of Canberra's energy requirements for electricity by the year 2020. Our friends at Wikipedia provide some information about the Hornsdale wind farm, which is alongside the Mount Lock substation on the power lines between Adelaide and Port Augusta. And the battery has enough capacity to store 129 megawatt hours of energy and discharge at 100 megawatts into the power grid, and it's divided into two parts. The larger portion of this is contracted with the state government of South Australia to have 70 of the 100 megawatts running for up to 10 minutes to provide stability to the grid and prevent load shedding blackouts, and enabling the starting up of other generators when they have to stop for some particular reason. And this service has reduced the cost of grid services to the Australian Energy Market Operator, AEMO, by 90%. The other smaller portion, 30 megawatts, is contracted to run for up to 3 hours to provide this company Neoen for load management, so that when prices are low they can store energy in the battery, and when prices are high they can sell the energy, or there's excess of demand compared to the amount available from the wind. As we've seen, part of this contract is with this government of the ACT, which has a 50% ownership of the energy provider in Canberra. This is real-time data from the Hornsdale Power Reserve website showing price and usage at the Hornsdale wind farm and the related battery. This is the price they've been able to sell electricity at, and this is the amount they've been selling. If we hover it on this point, we can see that Hornsdale has been able to make continual sales in the last 2 days at an average price of about $100 per megawatt hour, and there have been occasions where spikes have gone up to 300 megawatts. The other function of the Hornsdale is helping to regulate the frequency of the alternating system, which is a special market that can only be provided by batteries and other quick reacting generating systems. The FCAS is a frequency ancillary service, frequency control ancillary service, and see there's a low price and this is the high price. Now we can see that energy is being sold all through the day, so the windmills are working all day, but there are periods when the amount of energy available is greater than the amount required, in which case the battery would store it. And so this is showing when the amount of energy available from the winds is greater than is required, and so the energy is being stored in the battery. And then this is when the amount of energy available from the winds is less than what's needed, and so the battery can release energy. So the Hornsdale battery is quite a sophisticated way of dealing with a number of different markets which are critical to the functioning of energy in Australia. A similar battery at Mira Lorna in California, which is also used to stabilise the alternating current power supply system. The Tesla battery system for regulation of the alternating current on the South Australian power grid. The largest lithium hydride batteries in the world.